welcome everybody. I'm delighted to be here this evening to be able to welcome our guest speaker, who is Lance Miller, all the way from California. And Lance spoke with us on our launch night, and I didn't know Lance at the time. I didn't know anything about him, and I was blown away by the energy of his speech and his presentation. So this evening's masterclass is going to be a bit of a masterclass in how to kind of energize you, how to energize your clubs. And after Lance's speech the last time, I came out of it wanting to go for a marathon run or something like that. I had so much energy from his passion and from his energy. So listen up, everybody. Take plenty of notes. And this is going to be, Lance grew a club, I believe, from 5 members up to something like 95 members in the space of 1 year. And so he's got plenty of ideas how to do that and how to kind of energize the base and the members of your club. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Elizabeth, I
think. Thank you, Gavin. Immediate past District Director Gerard, dignitaries, Zoom Masters, Program Quality Director DTM Brenda, and of course Lance. It is an absolute pleasure to introduce you. We thank you for being in D71 for the 2nd time in about 3 months, and in that time I have followed you around the world. You were speaking to people in Canada. I've always been in the audience because I agree with Gavin. You have a message that we desperately need. For those of you who haven't heard of him, I think there's no one in the room who haven't heard of you. Lance is 2005 World Champion Public Speaking. Those of you who have not heard his winning speech, please do so. I listened to it again today, and you do ask a wonderful question. Do you validate? And he does. But I think Lance not only brings this championship quality to us, I mean, he's also an adventurer. He's an entrepreneur. He's a trainer. He's a Rotarian. And he's also a Toastmaster. But tonight, the bit of him that we want the most is to hear about how to build these winning clubs. If anyone can go from, like, as Gavin said, from 5 to about 95, he can do it. So we're here, Lance, tonight. We're giving you our ears, our eyes, our hearts, everything. So over to you to tell us about building a championship club. Over to you, Lance.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. And again, thank you for District 71 for inviting me back. And as I said, my only regret is that I can't be there to enjoy each other with you. I've had some just wonderful trips to the Isles there, and there are some favorite parts of my world. A couple of things I just want to point up front to warn everybody. First of all, I'm not politically correct. So if you're expecting a politically correct speech, you might want to just tune out right now, because I'm not. The other thing is I don't pull my punches. I think in order to get to the bottom and find solutions, to get to the bottom of problems and find solutions, we have to be able to openly discuss the problem. And as I like to tie a story into different points, in 2013, I went in the hospital with severe right side pain, and they took my appendix out. And that wasn't the problem. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a little attached to my organs. I don't like people yanking organs out of my body just on a whim. I had a spastic iliopsoas muscle, and probably a week of painkillers, I would have been fine. Instead, I had 6 weeks of recovery, and I'm now missing an appendix. And so in order to get a correct solution, we have to get a correct diagnosis, and able to do that, we have to be able to openly talk about the problems we have, the issues we're facing. And with that, the first thing I want to talk about is that Toastmasters is an imperfect system. It is not a perfect system. And when I first got into Toastmasters and I was looking at how to run my club, I was thinking all the other clubs in Toastmasters are doing great, and we're the only ones struggling to figure out how to make our club work. I don't know if anybody else has ever felt like, I'm the only one struggling with this club. Everybody else seems to be doing great with their club. The truth of the matter is most of the clubs and Toastmasters around the world are struggling. Most of the clubs and Toastmasters around the world are under 20 members, and they've been under 20 members since I got in 30 years ago, and they were under 20 members 30 years before that. And Toastmasters has never effectively cracked how to build a large, successful club. My club did. And I'm going to share some of those things with you. So what I want to sort of approach this evening on is the fact that Toastmasters gives us tools to build our club. They don't build our club for us. And it's not like we have a complete recipe. You open up a cookbook and it says, if you mix these ingredients, you'll get this cake. Well, in Toastmasters, you open up the Toastmasters book and it says, here are the tools you have. With the line that's missing in that is that you have to figure out how to use those tools. So I want to address a couple issues right up front that I discovered in our club and some things that were holding us back. And just so you understand, I've shared this story before, but we had about 35 people when I joined Toastmasters in 1992 attending my club. It was 2 years old at that point, or 3 years old at that point. About 6 months later, we had 12 coming to the meeting. Okay, so we were losing membership. We weren't sure what was happening. One day, 5 of us showed up. We had coffee. We didn't have a meeting. We sat around drinking coffee, and a couple critical things happened in that meeting. We decided if we're going to do Toastmasters, let's win with it, or let's go do something else and win with it. And it's what I call, we didn't want to run a hospice Toastmasters club. You know, hospice Toastmasters, that's where we keep the members comfortable until the club dies. And there's a lot of clubs out there that are like that. They're like 5, 6, 7 members, and they just won't die. They just keep going on and on and on, but they don't grow either. They don't come alive. The other thing was that in order to win with Toastmasters, we decided, the 5 of us, to be a top 10 club in Toastmasters. And this is back when Toastmasters International used to rank all the clubs based on the Distinguished Club program that they had back then. And you got points for everything you did. You got points for every new member. You got points for every educational completion. You got points for every newsletter you sent out. And I love that program. I'm not a fan of the current Distinguished Club program. I've been very vocal about that, because you can be President's Distinguished and have a failing, struggling club. That being said, there's no reason every club isn't President's Distinguished, because it is a very low bar to meet. You should be doing a minimally being President's Distinguished with your clubs. But what turned us around is we had a goal. We decided to do something. We decided to win with Toastmasters. And it was really that game of becoming a top 10 club that drove the club. And everybody didn't sign on up front. It wasn't like everybody goes, yes, let's go do it. We had to start slowly. And I'll tell you a couple things, a couple turning points that were very critical that turned the club around. And I want you to look at this with your clubs. The first thing we did is we called the members in the club, and we didn't say, why aren't you coming to the meeting anymore? We didn't ask them that question. We said, what did you enjoy about coming to the meeting? And the number one thing they told us was that they wanted to have fun. And the second reason they told us was they wanted to see their friends. And the third reason they told us is they wanted to get the improvement Toastmasters offered. And we realized immediately why our club was failing. We had stopped being a fun, friendly environment. We had 2 presidents in a row that were not fun and friendly. And so we have our own policy in our club. We write out different things that work. The number one policy that we have is we have to maintain a fun, friendly environment. And it's very simple. If we have a speech that upsets a lot of members, or we get some bad speech evaluation that upsets somebody, we have a table topics that stirs the pot, or we have a toxic individual that comes in the meeting and they start to sort of chew up different people and they're hostile to different folks and things like that. And it starts to make it not fun to come to the meeting. Our membership starts to drop off. So we monitor all these things. And so one of the things is making sure it's a fun, friendly environment. I cannot understate that. And actually the reason, I'll show you how I came to join Toastmasters, is I had a friend of mine invite me to the club 8 times. I had to be asked to come to the club 8 times. And he didn't say, you're a horrible speaker, Lance. There is growth and development that you can have in your life. That's not what he was telling me. He said, we had so much fun. You should have been at the meeting. We had so much fun. He sold the fun. And I came to the meeting, and this is your membership building component of tonight. I came to the meeting for 2 reasons. I wanted to see what he was so excited about. I didn't want to join the club, but I wanted to see what he was so excited about. And the second reason was I knew he would not stop asking me to come to the meeting until I came. Now, think about how many people we've asked to come to Toastmasters and they didn't come and went, oh, I don't want to upset them. If Glenn Barton had not been a pain in my posterior for about 6 or 7 weeks, inviting me every week, enthusiastic about his club, we're having fun, I wouldn't be in Toastmasters. My life would be on a completely different path. And I'm so thankful that he persisted wanting me to have fun. So let's just nail that one right there. Now, I'm going to get into a couple other points, but here is a critical thing I've seen a lot of clubs suffer from, and my club suffered from it. And that is when I joined Toastmasters, I was not looking to be the CEO of a new local nonprofit that taught communication and leadership and build it into a worldwide force. I was trying to develop my own skills. So I looked at the people that were ahead of me in the club as being advanced to what I was, and I would learn from them. So when there was a problem in the club, I didn't say, I have to solve that problem. I did. I'm going to flip my screen here for just a second. See, I'd use what's called an SEP. Now, if anybody's ever read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a wonderful author from your neck of the woods, an SEP is known as somebody else's problem. So when there was a problem in the club, I looked at it that somebody should solve that problem. I didn't say I should solve the problem. Somebody should solve the problem. The problem we had was everybody else in the club was saying somebody should solve that problem. Because really when it came down to it, I'm saying nobody owned the club. In a business, somebody owns the business. And what will happen is you have a problem coming along and the business owner will solve that problem or his business will die. In Toastmasters, we all got into Toastmasters to develop ourselves. We didn't get into it from a standpoint of wanting to be the owner of the club and this is our club and we're going to run with it. But what happened in my club, the 5 of us that decided to build a championship club, to be a top 10 club, excuse me, we started to own the club. And when you own the club, you start solving the problems of the club. And the simplicity is there's problems in the club that aren't covered in the Toastmasters training, which gets up to my next point. Let's see. Okay. My PowerPoint. I'm going to skip through some slides. I do want to share this with you. Here's what I see, what happens to us in Toastmasters, or happens to us in life, rather. We're born, and when we're young, we have a tremendous amount of creativity and free will. And I hope we all agree. When we were kids, it was like life was an exciting day. I don't know if you remember Saturday, but I used to get up as a kid and it was Saturday. Saturdays lasted all day for me, man. I'd get up and I had no school and it was Saturday. And I was so excited about Saturday. And I'd go outside and I'd, play Army for an hour, come back in, get a glass of water, go ride my bike, come in, it'd be an hour later. I'd go out and I'd play Cowboys and Indians. And it wasn't even lunchtime yet. I wake up now, blink, and it's Sunday morning. I blink again, it's Monday morning. What happened? I had all this free will and energy. And then there were these other people in my life called parents, or I'm going to call authorities, the big people. And they teach us how we're supposed to behave. And we learn, at least I did, that life was a lot more enjoyable if I was aligned with my parents versus being perpendicular to my parents. And it was a lot less painful. And there was a point where I started to do something or say something. And I looked at mom and dad and said, what would they do or say if I did that? And at that moment, and I'm asking you if you did the same thing, at that moment, Hubi started to become the author of our thoughts and actions, the big people. I went to school for 12 years through my regular school, 4 years of university. I was taught what seat to sit in at what time and to study what other people figured out. I was never taught to stand up and give an original thought. I wasn't taught to figure things out for myself. I was taught how to study what other people figured out. And as long as I showed up on time and I kept the teacher, the authority happy, I got to succeed. Then I got a job and sit at this seat, come in on time, don't rock the boat. And if we like you someday, we'll promote you. And to a large degree, and it happened to me lesser than it happened to a lot of people, we turn over our future, we turn over our creativity, we turn over our ability to forge our future to the authorities, waiting for somebody to give us permission to do that. And what I see in Toastmasters is a lot of people show up in Toastmasters and sit in the seat at the right time, waiting for their club to succeed. And the club, there is no higher authority in the club than the members of the club. It's up to the club to make the club succeed. And that was a hard pill to swallow when I was first looking at it. And when I was president of my club, I realized that the success of the club was a direct reflection of my leadership ability. Nobody else was there. There was no higher authority above me going to come in and correct it, as there had always been throughout my entire life. The first time when I got to run a Toastmasters club, it was the first time I got to run an entire organization as the senior executive with nobody over my shoulder telling me what to do. I got to discover my strengths and my weaknesses. But the truth of the matter was I had to look at it every day. When things weren't going right, I had to realize that was a reflection of my leadership ability. And the success of your club right now is a reflection of the cumulative leadership in your club, because there is no higher authority that's going to build your club. So what happens to us is just a feeling is just we get hypnotized by the authorities. And then we join Toastmasters and we come in and we say, create your world for 4 to 6 minutes with an icebreaker. Here's how bad it is. We pass out. That's how bad this has gotten. Toastmasters, to me, primarily is an environment that we learn how to start creating our lives again. We learn how to start creating, taking ownership for us. And it's a safe place to make mistakes. It's a safe place to screw up. We learn how to do that. Now I'm going to move along. Okay, this is an important point I want to make. And that is that the meaning of life is that you have, and when I get to do this on the live stage, I get to run around and shake the screen and then yell at the AV guys and say, oh, they screwed it up. What's that supposed to say? The meaning of life is you have to figure it out for yourself. And that's going to be the number one thing I want to get across to you right now is that what I've learned in Toastmasters was how to look at problems and start figuring out how to solve those problems rather than studying what somebody else figured out. Yes, you go talk to experts, you get your Toastmasters training, but it's up to you to start thinking on your own and figuring out what do we do to make this club work, to try things and to fail, try things and to fail, try things until you find something that works and you know that works and you keep it moving at that point. So a big component in you building a great club is that ownership of the club and willing to figure things out for yourself, think for yourself. And that's what changed my life. It's what changed my whole career path in my life. It changed the way the opportunities I had, the management opportunities that opened up once I really started thinking on my own in business environments. I'm going to zip through a couple of these other points here. So I want to get down to some meat. So there's a game in Toastmasters. So we got about 15, 20 minutes here, and then we'll go to some Q&A. There's a game. And when we wanted to be a top 10 club, we started playing Toastmasters like we would play a sports game. And the sports game, if you know, I know you've got probably cricket and soccer. We have basketball and American football and baseball. We're in the World Series right now. And whoever puts the most points on the board wins the game. And that's how we played the Toastmasters game. So let's look at what the Toastmasters game is. Every Toastmasters, every game has a beginning and an end to it. So the Toastmasters beginning and an end. And when I'm in live sessions, I like to have the Q&A with the audience and ask them. And people usually go, well, before Pathways, I said, what's the beginning? They go, your icebreaker. What's the ending? The DTM. And they're doing all this stuff. I said, no, you have a certain time frame that you play the game. The game is played in Toastmasters from July 1st to June 30th. And that's how you accumulate your points. There's a beginning and an end. There's a time frame. We play the game for 1 year. And it's how much can you grow your club in 1 year? And there's two primary ways you grow your club. One is by getting members in the club. Okay, build your membership. That's the first thing. And the second thing, now this is on the old legacy program. I haven't changed it for Pathways, but you get those members to complete education completions. You get them through the Toastmasters program. That's how you build a club. Members in, members educated. What we do in Toastmasters is we're a communication and leadership program. And so people come in and it's pretty much a learn by doing program. We take incompetent people and we put them in positions that they have to be competent in, and they don't know how to do that. That starts with your icebreaker. It starts with the first time you're table topics master. It starts with the first time you have to coach or evaluate somebody. You don't know how to do it. Great. That's what the Toastmasters program is. Figure out how to do it. Let's learn. And by doing the program, we actually get the benefit of it, which is going to come up to my second point. I have a couple other slides to get through before I get to that. But the simplicity is we have to get people in and we have to get people through their education program, and that changes their life. And I'm going to see what my next, okay, I'm going to go into the team structure. And this is the crux of what I want to get across to you in building the club. I do a whole seminar, which is not this one, called Leadership is Everybody's Business. And if you look at like the World Cup, in America, we have the Super Bowl. If you look at the World Cup or your football championships, how hard and I don't know all the names, but how hard would Manchester play if the owner of the Manchester team is the only one that got to get the trophy or the ring or the award? How hard would those team members play if the only one who get to win the game was the owner of the sport? Now, I do this in business. The whole idea is to build a team in business and get everybody wanting to win the game. So in Toastmasters, it's important that everybody wants to win the game. What happened in my club was everybody wanted, after a couple of years of doing this, everybody got on board that we wanted to be a top 10 club. Everybody wanted to be a top 10 club. It wasn't a matter of just a couple of the execs wanted to be a top 10 club and we're trying to push everybody else to do it. The members wanted to win the game. So what we had to do is create a team structure where we're all working as a team to make this happen. Okay? And maybe at some point, if you want, we can come back. I can come back and I can do a whole component on the components of a team structure and how to put that together. But let's look at the officers and how do the officers work as a team to make your organization function. This was my contribution to my club. I sorted this out through a lot of organizational design training I have and working to basically make teams work. So let's look at this. The first officer, and it's going to come with this caveat. You can't manage somebody if you can't measure what they do. So in order to build a successful Toastmasters club, I had to be able to measure how well my officers were doing their job in an objective manner. So here's what I came up with. The first officer that sets the meeting up is the Sergeant at Arms. There is no meeting space if the Sergeant at Arms does not set up the meeting space. So I had to come up with an objective way to measure whether they did it correctly. And so I came up with a functioning meeting space, meaning the meeting space functioned properly. The air conditioning was on, the right number of chairs, the lectern was set up, the gavel, the ribbons were up there, the banners hung, everything's functioning. Now, can it function better? Yes. If we can function better, then yes. If it's not functioning, he doesn't get a check mark for that day. And the big point is an on-time start. The Sergeant of Arms in our club gets everybody in their seat and starts the meeting exactly on time. And I have a graph in every meeting we start with the meeting start on time. We check, that's that person's responsibility to make sure that space is set up and the meeting starts on time. Now with the virtual world, our Sergeant of Arms runs all the Zoom interface and it brings people in and makes sure that they share their screen and mutes people when they're talking and does all that. Posts the agenda 4 or 5 times during the meeting in the chat so that new members when they're coming or guests when they come in have the agenda in the chat. They're making sure that that Zoom interface is functioning okay. The point is, this is now your meeting location. That's the person that sets up the meeting location. Now, I like to say, who's responsible for getting guests to the meeting? Most people, most districts, most Toastmasters say the vice president of membership. And in the membership training, it does tell you you're responsible for getting guests. But when I set our club up, the person responsible for the guest is the vice president of public relations. And I'm going to tell you, this is a wrong title. It misleads what the real responsibilities of this individual is, or the responsibilities are, excuse me, wrong tense. The responsibilities are to promote and market the club. And I think we'd be better suited, and this came from an executive with Toastmasters International when I presented this to the executives of Toastmasters International, that it's a wrong title. This should be the vice president of promotion and marketing. And that gives a completely different viewpoint to what we're doing. We're promoting and marketing the club to the public. But here's how I measure their success. How many guests show up at the meeting? It's a real simple thing. You are responsible for running programs. Now you get the club to do it, but the VPPR is responsible for putting games in place, running programs, doing social media, having events that get guests to arrive at the meeting. Now, guests then come to the meeting and they experience the meeting. And this is critical, that they experience Toastmasters. I think we'll all agree we didn't know what Toastmasters was until we got to experience it. It was like eating some strange food you'd never had before. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it tastes like. So you can come to Toastmasters. People think that you're going to sit around and raise glasses and toast each other all evening, or you sit around and put bread in the toaster and you make toast. They don't know what you're doing at Toastmasters. They come to it and they go, wow, it's completely different than what I thought. If we've surveyed everybody in this call, we'd probably all say, if I knew what Toastmasters was, I would have gotten in it sooner. So you have to have them come experience Toastmasters as a guest. And then after the meeting, one of the things we ask is, tell us what you thought of our club. What did you think of the meeting? And if they say, even if they don't say, but they go, gee, this is actually pretty neat. I didn't realize how much fun it was. I wouldn't mind being a member. Now they see the vice president of membership. The vice president of membership gets their potential members from the vice president of public relations, the number of guests. Once they come as a guest, they go to the vice president of membership. And they're tracking them and getting them to come back and talking to them and loving them and caring about them and asking them if, would they be interested? What things do they want to change in their life? Would this work for them? And the way I track the vice president of membership is the number of new members they get in the club. Now, once they sign up, they fill out the membership form, they write a check, and that goes to the treasurer. They bank the money, and the treasurer keeps accurate financials. So if he's not keeping the financials accurately, he's not doing his job, and he collects the dues. And on dues collection, I'll just say we start about 6 weeks before the end of the dues collection period, and we hit it every week. In the last 2 weeks, we'll pull in the vice president of education and the president to talk to people that haven't paid yet if we need to. But for years, we've had all of our dues collected probably a week early. The worst thing you can do is wait to the last week and try to collect your dues. Money doesn't come out of people very easily. It goes in real easy. It doesn't come out very easily. Okay, so they write a check. And now they go to the vice president of education, probably the toughest office in all of the officer positions is, and what we used to do before Pathways, and I have another book here, but we get the manual out and we'd go through the manual with them. And then I would open up the front cover of the manual and I would say, let's get a date when you can finish your competent communicator. And right now we're at the end of October. If it was in my club, I would say, let's have you finished by June 30th, because I want the points this year. Okay, so I would write June 30th, get their agreement. I'd have to have them sign the inside cover of their book. With Pathways, it's a little different. And I think we're all, at least in my club, we're struggling to actually figure out how to work with Pathways. That's another talk I can do. I'm not going to get into that right now. But it's a completely different training program, and we're trying to adjust to it. And there's some specific things I've done in my club to make it more workable so we keep the members winning. But the way I judge the vice president of education is the number of education completions. So they're tracking those all through the year. And our goal is to try to get everybody through an education completion every year. It's not, you don't do 3 years, again, back on the CC manual, it's not 3 years to do a CC. Okay. And then you have the secretary, and the secretary keeps accurate club records and of the club activities and maintains a lot of the communication with Toastmasters International. Okay. Now, the way this works with the vice president of education, if they're doing the Toastmasters program, they'll start to win and their life will start to change. And when their life starts to change, they start to bring their friends to the meeting because they're excited and enthused about it. And that's what happened in my club. We started getting people to speak frequently. I'm going to get into that in just a second. This is the other big turning point in the club. We got people to do the Toastmasters program and their life started to change. When their life started to change, they started to drag their friends and family to the meeting. And that's how it built the club. Just the energy of changing people's lives. Okay. Now we have the president. I'm going to talk about the president real briefly. President does two things primarily. One is they ensure that the club's running properly so you can have winning members and an expanding club. When I look as president, the club should be larger and more education completions than what we had the year before. I'm in as president for the third time in my club. We're in a rebuilding phase right now. We're not 80 or 90 members. We haven't been 80 or 90 members for about 10 years, but we were 80 or 90 members for about 15 years. We're at 30 members this year and we're rebuilding back up. And I was for 15 years, I was out running around the world speaking. I wasn't an officer in my club. I was showing up at the club meetings when I was in town. The whole makeup of the club shifted. And so what we had with the leadership shift, with the Toastmasters taking that game away that we couldn't get a reward for being a top 10 club anymore. We didn't have the motivation. We didn't get validated for actually having a great club. We didn't have a game to play. So my club started to come back down a little bit. But the point is, the president ensures winning members, and what he does, he gives help to his officers. Make sure the officers are doing their job and winning at it. And you do that for two reasons. One is the Toastmaster member who agrees to be Sergeant of Arms, agrees to be VPPR, should have a positive experience. They should grow and learn from it. It should be a pleasurable thing for them to do. So you're there as president to help them have that growth. The second reason you make sure that your officers are winning and doing their job properly is that if your officers don't do the job, you get it. And if you don't want to have a good time as president, have officers that don't do their job. If the VP of Sergeant Arms doesn't show up, you have to set up the meeting. If the VP membership's not there, you got to sign up the new members. If the Vice President of Education isn't there, you got to schedule people and book them and put the meetings together. If the treasurer isn't doing their job, you got to do the books. You want to have a horrible time? Have officers that don't do their jobs. So when I was president, all three times, I'm working very closely with my officers. I'm talking to them on a regular basis, making sure they're okay, helping them debug things, keeping them pumped up, because people will get down on themselves. If they're busy and they were like the vice president of public relations, they're supposed to send out a newsletter and they hadn't done it for 3 weeks. They'll start to feel badly that they're not doing it. And you need to call them up or take them out for coffee or a Guinness or whatever and give them a hug and tell them you love them and you're doing great. And let me help you get this thing out and winning with it. So that's what you do. You actually get them winning, keep them winning. Now, as president, you're going to get hung up. You're going to hit the wall and you're going to wish you weren't president. What you need to do is you need to get help. And there's two places you get help from. First of all, you get help from inside your club. Bring your executive committee around and say, hey, we don't have new members. People aren't showing up on time. Meetings are starting late, whatever the problem is. Use the mind trust you have in your club. And that's part of effective leadership, and have people come up with solutions. Get them on the team of solving the problem. Don't have your officers sitting there saying it's somebody else's problem. It has nothing to do with me. Have people look at what can we do to solve this. If you have some key members in your club that are longtime Toastmasters or dynamic individuals, tap their energy. If you can't get it handled inside the club, go outside the club and handle it. Go to the top clubs in your district and see what they're doing. Contact your district director, your division director, saying we have this problem. What do you recommend? And, but I'll tell you, a lot of times division directors and area directors have been in Toastmasters for like 6 months. They just agreed to take the job. So a lot of times they don't have the answers, but there's still a resource to get answers for you. The point is, don't let your club sit there with a problem and not solve it. And that's one of the big things I learned was solve those problems quickly, keeping it fun and friendly and keeping the club moving towards its goal. Okay, now the next thing is, here's where the club turned around. Speaking frequency. I look at Toastmasters a little bit like going to the gym. And imagine if you hadn't been to the gym and worked out for a number of years, and you went to the gym and worked out, how are you going to feel? You're going to be sore. The next day, you're going to be sore. Well, that's like you haven't spoken for a number of years, and you get up and give an icebreaker, you're going to be nervous. And I consider speaking a muscle, and you got to exercise your speaking muscle. Now, if your attitude at the gym was, I was so sore, I'm not going back to the gym for 6 months. How are you going to feel in 6 months? You're going to be sore the next time you exercise. You lost all the gain from going to the gym that one day. And anybody who knows that you have to go to the gym like 3 times a week. And maybe after 3 or 4 weeks, you start to get over your stiffness and feeling the muscles build. Well, the same thing we found in speaking. When we first started this, we wanted the points. We wanted people to get through their competent communicator, their advanced communicator levels, to get the points, to raise us up in the standings. And so we were pushing people to complete a speaking level every year. That was what our game was, complete one speaking level a year. What happened was they started keeping the gain they got from each speech, and their life started to change, and they started to become more competent, and they started to become more confident because they were doing the program and they were getting the wins from doing the program. And when their enthusiasm came up, and this is what I talk about, the twinkle in the eye, they started to get the twinkle in the eye and the spring in the step, and they were excited to come to the meeting, and they realized that they were more capable than they ever thought they were. And they were overcoming barriers, and they were able to reach out that in the community or talk to people. They felt more comfortable at work, or they felt more comfortable at a party, or they felt like they were more themselves. And a lot of times I say Toastmasters is a little bit like church. We revive the dead in Toastmasters. People come in and they're this little huddled shell of a mass, and 6 months later, you can't shut them up. They are so alive. This is where it turned around. And really what I realized, running our clubs, building a great club is really about this one thing. It's about winning members. That's what it's about. It's about that person came in, they need help in their life. We tailor our club to help members win. Okay? That's what we do. And if they're having a certain problem, we had one girl, I'm going to pop out of it so I can see you guys a little bit better. We had one girl came to my club. She was so nervous. She sat probably for 3 months in the back of the room, was scared to even do a tabletop. She came every week for 3 months. And we have a break in the middle of our meeting. And at the break, she came up to me and she goes, I got to speak right after the break. I have to speak. I've got to get up on stage. I said, okay, great. So I talked to the Toastmaster and I just said, let me have the meeting for just a second. So we started the meeting after the break. I said, we're going to bring Shirley up on stage. Shirley, come on up on stage, stand up here. And she stood up on that stage and talked for like 2 minutes, and she did it. I didn't wait till next week. I got her up on that stage right then because she had finally decided that she needed to stand up and speak. And we altered the meeting very quickly, got her up on stage. She spoke for a couple of minutes, and then she was doing speeches after that. Okay, so we focus on keeping the members winning is really the primary focus that I have on it. Let's see. I got one more thing I want to hit on as far as some metrics, and then we're going to open it up to some Q&A. Okay. So one of the things we figured out in my club was the speaking frequency. They don't teach you this in Toastmasters. This is, again, based on the old legacy program. I haven't changed my PowerPoints, but what's your club training capacity? Now, let's just say that you have 4 speakers at every meeting and you meet once a week. So you basically have 50 meetings a year. So with that, you have 200 speaking slots. Now, under the old program, there were 10 speeches per speaking level. And that meant if you're at 100% efficiency in your club, you could get 20 speaking completions done or education completions done. That's what you could do. And when we won the world championship, when we won the number 4 position in Toastmasters, we had gone to double meetings a week because we had so many people in the club. We had to expand our ability to deliver. And one of the things I recommend is if you have a club, and there's a lot of clubs that meet at noon. I know there's a lot of clubs usually outside of the US. Most of the clubs in the US meet once a week. A lot of clubs, and I know, meet every other week. So if you don't have the speaking opportunities to get your members through their manuals fast and quickly, throw in an extra meeting once a month. From my standpoint, I go to a bar, drink beer and get 8 speeches in, or have somebody has a backyard in their house and you have some wine and cheese and have them everybody come over on a Saturday afternoon and you give speeches, and you give 8 speeches, and that's as many speeches as you give in 2 months, but everybody gets to get through and they get to move through their speaking manual fast. That's what's important. So that's where you got to figure out how to keep your club winning, and they keep your club winning by getting them to do the program. So with that, I'm about at the time frame here. There's a lot I can go into. I've got another 5 or 6 hours of information, but I'm hoping what I gave you a good foundation for what you're working on right now. So let's actually open it up to some Q&A, and I'll see what specific issues I can help you with.
Can I suggest before we start the Q&A that we all unmute and give you a massive round of applause?
Thank you.
And I also want to say I'm really happy that you didn't give us any more, because it gives me another reason to invite you back. I mean, this is so rich.
It's given you 2 reasons, Elizabeth.
Madam Moderator, are there any questions in the chat yet?
Yes, we do. We have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first question I have is from Gerard. He says, what is the best focus for fun? What a great question.
Good question. It's not funny. And that's what I want to really I want to make sure it's not funny. If you look at the most fun you have, it's when you're really productive. It's when things are working well and you feel that team camaraderie come together. And so part of a fun meeting is, first of all, it starts on time, it runs on time, and it ends on time, and it moves quickly. Okay, so the other thing is the president kicks it off. And we've had some, when I said we had two presidents that weren't fun and friendly, they would start the meeting off with, one guy he was just this really quiet church mouse type of a guy. And he would sort of start the meeting off and he would go, "Good morning. What can one say about today?" And he wasn't asking a rhetorical question. He was wondering what he should say. He goes, "We're here today for another Toastmasters meeting. And we've gathered and we'll have some things that we'll do today and some speakers will come." Now, you guys can see if you're having a meeting like that, there's no energy coming off the president. And you're starting to need to go, "Lance, don't do that for any longer. I'm going to just exit right away," right? The other guy was really negative, and he was like trying to tell us we're all going to hell in a handbasket unless we do what he says. And he started fining people if they were late for the meeting. And he made speech evaluation pass fail, and nobody's going to be a competent communicator in this club unless you're competent. And so I would have to flunk people on their icebreaker, and they make them do it again. It was just this horrendous. People would walk in a minute late, and you'd gavel and goes, "That's $2 fine for being late." And people were like, "God, I'm getting yelled at in my Toastmasters meeting." What fun is the president has the responsibility of setting the tone, and we have different emotional tones. So you want an enthusiastic, but the main thing is high energy tone. And you want to have a great recognition of people. You want this thing to move. You want the meeting to move. So when we start our meeting, we introduce the guest. We have our vice president of education comes on, and they spend a very short time laying out the meeting, and then everything else is handled in chat. We don't sit there for 10 minutes putting the meeting together for next week. 2 or 3 minutes, VPE's up, talking to people who wants to do what, good, handle me in chat. We'll talk about it at the end of the meeting. We do a thing called speaking outside the club. If anybody spoke outside of the club, because we encourage people to speak outside the club, you share where you spoke outside the club. And so we walk through that. And every now and then somebody wants to give a 5 to 7 minute speech on speaking outside the club. Nope. It's like 30 seconds, 60 seconds max. You just tell what you did, who you spoke to, how many people were there. So you keep that meeting moving. The other thing is, if there's any speeches or speech evaluation that you feel goes sideways, or table topics questions or responses to table topics that you feel irritated somebody, it's important at the end of the meeting to bring that around. I usually don't point it out. I never reprimand somebody in public, but I would say it's important to remember that Toastmasters is a fun, friendly environment. It's a safe place to make mistakes. It's a place we come to grow. And when we come to grow, we learn how to give a speech. We also learn how to give evaluations. We learn how to answer table topics questions. We learn how to ask them. And in the process of doing that, sometimes we make mistakes. Let's just remember, we're all human beings. We're here to grow, or something like that. I'll put it back on that highlight to just sort of chill people out. And I've had a couple disasters of nuclear explosions that have happened in meetings, and I had to actually sew body parts back together. So anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Wow, that was a very full question, Lance. I do have more questions, so let's see if we can get through a few more.
Try to make the answer shorter.
Thank you. My next question comes from Julie. She says, in her club, there are many members who are overwhelmed at work and they struggle to speak often. If the club pushes them, they decide they don't have time for the club and we have fewer members, how can we deal with this situation?
Well, first of all, you have to find a time to talk to them that they have time to talk to you. And if they're at work and they're pressured. The other thing I would recommend is, and this is the truth, you don't have time to prepare a speech, but I will guarantee you that they will talk to you for 10 minutes about they don't have time to prepare a 5 to 7 minute speech. And I will tell people, do a speech on how you don't have time to prepare a speech. You've got the speech right there. There are all sorts of topics you can talk on. And the point is, we want you in the club. We want you to have the benefit from it. Even as a world champion, I will tell you, I've never had enough time to prepare for a speech. You never feel like you have enough time. So I would encourage those people to just pick a topic, put some points out, and we're going to help you put your speeches together really quickly. And this is a safe place. Nobody's going to fire you. Nobody's going to reprimand you. You're going to do as well as you can, but I want you to get the benefit of the Toastmasters program. And what you'll find is they'll start to do it, and they'll start to squeeze a little bit more time in. They'll find the time to do it. It's not a priority to them yet. But when they start to actually do it, and they start to win with it and put a speech together, and they'll start to make time for it from that standpoint. But I would just talk to them and see what it takes. A lot of good two-way communication, understanding, caring about the individual, and wanting them to get the benefit out of the program. And it's going to enhance their life and enhance their work career. If they're that busy at work, I'll guarantee you they need Toastmasters.
Thank you, Lance. My next question comes from Larry. He asks, how does a club coach fit into a struggling club?
Well, that's a whole other seminar. If you have a struggling club and you're talking about a club coach or coming in from the outside to try to revive the club, I'm assuming that's what it is. You have to address the interest and willingness and desire of the members in that club to build their club. And it's just that simple. The members have to want to build it. There has to be an energy to build the club. There has to be a desire, a drive to do it. There has to be an intention to make it happen. That's where it starts. It comes with the decision that they're going to build the club. So you need to sit them down and say, let's see what we're going to do with this club. And there's a lot of people that want to have a great Toastmasters club, but they don't want to build it. They don't want to work it. They don't want to do the effort, take the effort to make it happen. But with that too, if you have that, if you have a struggling club, the primary focus should be on new membership. It should be having parties or having activities that get new members coming in with that. And again, I said, these questions aren't 2-minute answers, but in order to build a club and turn a club around, the first requisite is to have a dynamic club experience for someone. You have to have something worth joining. So if you have this dying club and people come in and it smells like dead rats because of the rotting flesh in the meeting, these old decrepit people rotting away, they're dying. Nobody wants to join a club like that. You want to, even if there's 6 people there, if it's a fun, enthusiastic group, you want to join it. So you have to have something worth joining. That's where it starts. The second point is winning members. The members have to be winning with the program and have some enthusiasm for the program. And then you start to actually have something that you can bring people into.
Thank you, Lance. Now I have a question from Teresa. She says, did you say your club was 80 to 90 members? If so, how did you manage accomplishing the members' educational goal achievements?
Yes, I did say that. And first of all, we have a 3-hour meeting. We have 6 speakers in the meeting. We have a half an hour for table topics. It's a weekend club. And a lot of times we go to lunch after the meeting. So we would have 2 or 3 speakers at lunch. We went to a second meeting during the week. We'd have 18 people show up, 18 to 20 people at that meeting. And we would have anywhere from 5 to 8 people speak at the second meeting during the week. But what we did is we geared up our production to meet the demand of the members. We did not cap the members to our production. It's the same way if you had a donut shop or a bakery and you're selling 500 donuts an hour and you had people showing up and they wanted to buy 1,000. What are you going to do? Turn them away? Or are you going to figure out how to make more donuts? You're going to figure out how to make more donuts. And so as a Toastmasters club, you need to expand your ability to deliver to your membership based on the size of that membership. Otherwise, your members don't win. And when they don't win, they leave the club.
Great, thank you. Now, I have got many questions here, so let's see if I can find another one that looks useful. I have been asked how we grow beyond our clubs, and we have over 40 people in the audience today from D71. And we are looking for feasible suggestions for new clubs.
Here's what I'd recommend. This seminar today is on building a championship club. It's not on where to go get new clubs. That's a whole other talk. I don't even want to go down that alley because I'm taking way too long on these answers right now.
Let's kind of get back on track.
Yeah.
How do you motivate members to want to take on roles and give speeches?
a couple of things I did this year, because Pathways was such an anomaly. It knocked our regular training systems out. People were struggling with the interface. They were struggling with a lot of the Pathways requirements and programs. I went back to what worked in the past, and I put together a program, and I contacted every member in the club, and I asked them, and I phrased it from this standpoint. As I said, I'm president this year, and I'm looking at, I need to get the production up in this club. And Pathways did not give me the ability to predict, because some of the paths have 2 or 3 speeches in them. Some of the paths has 6 or 8 speeches in them. Some of the speeches require all this extra work, and you got to do the podcast. And it was like, how am I going to schedule and manage this? So what I did, I put together a program and asked each member of my club to speak 10 times during the year. We call it coaching in my club. We don't call it speech evaluation. The idea is to coach somebody to be a better speaker, to be more competent, to coach 10 times, to be a functionary 5 times, and to hold the Toastmaster, general evaluator, and table topics position once. So that was 28 engagements out of 50 meetings. So all the members except one agreed to do that. So they're all working to complete what I'm calling their Competent Renaissance Speakers program, which is something I developed. Was if they do all those things, you're a competent Renaissance speaker. And I posed it from the standpoint that I wanted them to get the maximum benefit out of Toastmasters. And I didn't care where they landed in the Pathways program. If you do 10 speeches, you're going to do at least 1 or 2 paths in Pathways, and we'll count those. But I want you to have at least 10 speeches that you do, so that you have enough repetition of speaking that you get the benefit of being in the club. I want you to coach at least 10 times. I want you to, the functionary positions teach you how to listen, teach you how to observe. Those are very important positions. And I like the person to go through all the functionary positions of timer, of awe counter, of grammarian, before they evaluate a speech, because you never heard an awe until you were the awe counter. You know, you didn't hear them. And so you have to learn how to listen for those things. And then it hones in your listening skills. So everything we do develops us. So that's one of the ways that I did it. The other thing is I talked to individuals about what their goals are, what things they're struggling with, or what they want to get out of being in the club. And then I gear the meeting, I gear their experience to getting that for them in the club. So as I said, the important thing for me is that people are benefiting and winning as a Toastmaster, and then they stay in the club and they're engaged. And so sometimes I had one member that said he's been in the club 30 years. He goes, I'm sick of giving 5 to 7 minute speeches. He didn't want to do Pathways. He was going to just stay in the club and not speak ever again. He didn't want to coach Pathways. I'll be the timer. And I said, this guy's a really valuable asset. And I said, no. I said, well, are you willing to work out of the old CC manual? He says, yeah, I love that. But I don't want to do 5 to 7 minute speeches. I said, no, I tell you, you work out of the CC manual. We'll count them as Pathway speeches, and you do 15-minute speeches. Tell the VPE that's what you want. And he was as happy as he could be. And he's engaged now, and he's doing that. So he's now engaged and working and is a great member in the club. But I had to work with him and figure out how to keep him engaged. Otherwise, he was going to probably wind up leaving the club. And this is where I say you got to figure these things out for yourself, and also realize there's no Toastmasters police. I'm not asking people to break the Toastmasters rules and do something that's not Toastmasters. I would never recommend somebody just speak. They speak out of a manual. They speak out of a project. This is a developmental program. I had a program that worked. My membership loved. I had members that don't like the current program. I'm still keeping them winning with what worked for them. And that's how I basically addressed it.
Yes, it's important to understand their needs and help them to grow. Now, how did you celebrate success in your club?
We gave everybody $1,000 check when they finished a CC. So, and that seemed to be a pretty good incentive. No, what we did, we of course recognized everybody. And if they did complete, back in the competent communicator times, we're virtual now. So anybody, there's announcements anytime anybody completes a speaking level in Pathways. But we would have the person come up and we'd present them with their competent communicator award. We have a camera, we have a video camera in our club. We record all their speeches when they're live. So we take pictures of them. They would be posted on the website. We would basically just acknowledge people when they won those things. And then of course, if anybody was in a contest, we had them come up. They went to the area contest, and even if they didn't win, they came up and they told us what their experience was. There was a lot of engagement and a lot of acknowledgement for people taking on different roles and acting, or different roles and actions. So
fabulous. Now you mentioned the $1,000 check, which I know that was tongue in cheek. What's the role of incentives in helping clubs succeed?
What's the, oh, incentives? Well, I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen getting a $25 voucher to the district store has never been an incentive for me to build my club. The recognition of a great club is what was the incentive we wanted. We wanted to, and we were the #1 club in the district for many, many, many years. I'm not sure where we fall right now, but there were years that we were probably 30% of the education achievement in our district. We were carrying the district with how much stuff we were doing. And we had multiple district officers. I think we've had 2 district directors out of the club. We've had 4 or 5 district Toastmasters of the Year out of the club. We've run the Toastmasters or the district conferences, different team members we've had. So as far as incentives go, I think recognition is the best incentive that you can have versus giving somebody 25 Toastmaster pounds in the district store, or a ribbon or something like that. I mean, those are nice acknowledgments, but really just having the recognition for having accomplished something. And also another point I think that's really big is I wish we did more of this. You're doing it here, which is great. We need to have more interaction with successful actions between clubs. Where different clubs, we sort of have mastermind groups or roundtables where people talk about what they're doing and they throw their problems out and they say, this is what we're doing in our club. We had that. This is what we found worked. And where we really back each other up. And what that does, it builds the esteem and the importance of the people that can come and contribute what they're doing, and the people that are struggling. It gives them a place where they can come, get some incentives, and realize that there are solutions to these programs. So those are the programs I've seen. There was never an incentive of a ribbon or a plaque or I said Toastmasters funds for the store that really motivated us. We wanted the recognition of being #1 or top in some capacity. We wanted to win, be recognized for really winning with Toastmasters.
Thank you, Lance. Now I've just got time for one more question. And this one is regarding the virtual world. Has virtual changed the dynamics and the level of engagement within your club?
The virtual world has set us all on our ear. And there's a lot of benefits to it, quite honestly. This is one right now that I can sit in my office in Los Angeles and I can have a conference call with people halfway around the world. And we can share ideas and we can do it virtually. And we probably would have never done this had we not had the pandemic come in and be forced to adapt to it. The same token, there's benefits from the standpoint that doing a virtual presentation is different, but just as important as doing a live presentation. But by doing virtual presentations, we're losing the eyeball issue of standing in front of a group of people and not having electronic digital interface with them and having to confront and talk to them live. And there's going to have to be probably an adjustment period when we get back to having our hybrid meetings, when we get back up in front of people. I think the silver lining in this is that in life, nobody lives a perfect life, and nobody lives a life that's totally planned out and it goes exactly as you plan. You have to learn to figure things out. You have to learn to adjust. You have to learn how to make things go right, make things happen. And when we had this whole pandemic issue tossed on us, we figured out how to survive and stay together. And that is probably the biggest lesson we can learn, that we can adjust to a new environment. We can adjust and make things happen. It doesn't mean that our business or our family or our relationship, whatever, has to fail. We can make adjustments and we can figure out how to make them work. And that's probably the biggest thing I think we've gotten out of the whole shift to virtual. And the other side, I have members now from New York City, from Dallas, from San Diego, from Bahrain. We have members come in from India all the time. I have a number of members in Florida that had moved to Florida, but they're not in LA anymore, but they want to be part of the club. So we have a membership base that we never had before. So I think there's no question it changed dynamics tremendously.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Lance. I that's all the time we have for the questions. Really appreciate your answers. And I'm now going to hand back to Elizabeth for the closing remarks.
Thank you. Another round of applause. And thank you, Madam Moderator, for an excellent job. Well, Lance, what can I say? If I was asked, if you said to me, do you validate? I would say, cha-chink, yes. I just have to thank you so much for bringing what I would call energy, enthusiasm, wisdom, and I think some ideas that really, I think you've created a spark in the minds of many people. They've been saying it in the chat, and I know I've made copious notes. I want to thank you for, I think, the very relaxed way you've spoken to us, the examples you've given us, the offer to come back, which I will definitely be taking. And I think literally firing our imaginations. We need it in D71. I think we've got it. And I think really all I can say is thank you for the inspiration you brought to us. What can I expect? World champion, world class, masterclass. And as I said, do you validate? And the answer is yes.